Welcome to another episode of the Men in Conversation series, a podcast series in collaboration with the Khaleesi Foundation and Justice Desk Africa. So a few weeks ago, I was giving a talk about fatherhood and the realities of what being a parent is like in South Africa. And at the end of that talk, we opened the floor up to Q&A. It was to a bunch of teenagers, ranged from like 13 to 18. One of the questions that came up was from, I think, about a 14-year-old girl who asked me, "Why didn't you go get the milk?" I was very confused about what she meant by that, but her teacher explained to me that that was the language they used for when a father would leave the house and not come back. You know, he's going off to the shop to get the milk, he's going to get cigarettes, and then he runs off and doesn't come back. And what struck me was just how nonchalant she was about that question, because it was such a standard reality in their life, and I can see from the kind of nods of heads from the other kids that that's something that either they've experienced themselves or someone very close to them has experienced. So in that community, it was such a standard thing. And when I explained to them that that thought had never even crossed my mind as a possibility, as something I could do or would want to do, that surprised them. That there was a man who didn't even think about wanting to leave his family and leave his kids behind. And it just reminded me that, you know, the way we parent has a real impact on our kids, and the way we don't parent also has a real impact. So, a friend of mine said the term that we live and parent in the shadow of our parents. So if you had a great parent, you live a life that reflects that. If you had a bad parent, you live a life that reflects that. And if you had an absent parent, you might think that parent had no impact on your life, but in the absence, there was an impact. So just remembering how incredibly important parenting and fatherhood in particular actually is to all of us. That's the thought that came up.
Wow, that is such a powerful story, and I think really sets the tone for our conversation today. So thank you so much for sharing. Welcome to another episode of the Men in Conversation series, a podcast series in collaboration with the Khaleesi Foundation and Justice Desk Africa. I am your host, Edward Keenan Jacobs. Today I'm joined by a phenomenal human being, Terence Mentor, who is a podcaster, a vlogger extraordinaire, better known as AfroDaddy. And please check out that podcast as well. It's phenomenal work. He has 10 years experience in commercial and talk radio stations in Cape Town, South Africa. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, with an intro like that, I would join you every day. I feel so hyped up after that. Thank you.
What can I say? Thank you so much for joining us. And today we'll be chatting a bit about fatherhood and the impact of fatherlessness in the lives of all kids, but especially young men. And this is a particularly important conversation in South Africa, which is often dubbed as the fatherless nation due to the staggeringly high levels of absent fathers in our country. So we'll chat a bit about this, the impact on young men, and then also think about how can men step up in their role as fathers and also step up in their role as mentors for other young men that might be in their spaces. What are your initial thoughts as it relates to the impact of fatherlessness on young men on the individual level, but also the broader societal impacts?
I think just firstly, right off the cuff, we need to say that we're going to be talking a lot about dads and the importance of dads. That's not to say that moms aren't important. And that single moms aren't doing a phenomenal job. And so when we say things like kids need to have a father in the home or a father figure in the home, that's not negating all of the incredible work that we know that moms and women do in our society. So I feel like I always need to put that disclaimer out.
Down there, 100%.
But studies do show that kids who grow up in homes with a father figure, and I say father figure specifically because that doesn't have to be your biological dad. It's not the person that you share genetics with specifically. But if you have that father figure in the home, kids are more likely to get higher levels of education, less likely to fall into teenage pregnancy, less likely to fall into gangsterism and drug abuse, more likely to have good mental health. Just in all of the ways we measure health and success in society, families who have that father figure in the home do achieve higher on those metrics. So the converse is also true, right?
Yeah.
When the father isn't in that home, there are so many more social issues that spread across the country. And look, I think it might be overstating things to say that all of our social issues are caused by fatherlessness, but I think there are a lot. It's a huge factor. I think there are a lot of things that can be positively affected if we had fathers in the home, and just to say, not just being in the home, but being active in the home. I think we also need to make that, sure, he's there, but if he's sitting there just reading a newspaper, who reads a newspaper? Like that standard idea of the dad sitting on his chair reading a newspaper and ignoring his children. Well, what's the point of even being there?
I think you really hit on a really important point there about the impact of fatherlessness, not only on individuals, but sort of the broader societal impacts and those social ills. And some of the statistics that I was reading in preparation for this conversation are just harrowing. In 2021, of more than 1 million births, only 60% of those births were registered with a father, which is completely staggering. And of sort of racial categories, only 30% of black young boys and young children have a father living in their household, compared to just over 50% of coloreds and 80% of white people. So that's a lot of numbers there.
Yeah, but I got to say,
help us make sense of that.
With those numbers, we also have to be careful. I mean, as harrowing as they are, as you said, we have to be careful about the way we talk about these stats, because sometimes they're true, but they don't reveal the reality.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, when that statistic of fathers living in the home, what they mean by that is biological fathers living in the home. So if you are a stepdad, if you're a adoptive dad, if you are just somebody's partner who still cares for the kids, that's not counted in those statistics. And even with that being given, there is still a fatherlessness issue in the country, but those statistics don't go into why. They don't go into what is happening. Why aren't these men stepping up? The two statistics that we don't often talk about is the fact that most children in South Africa live with a male in the household. So they're not living with their dads, but there is an adult male in the household, whether it's an older brother, a cousin, a mother's boyfriend, whatever it is. So question one would be, why aren't these men stepping up to take that father role? And the next question would be, what's happening with the biological fathers? Where are they? What are they doing? If we maybe hold off the assumption that they're terrible, terrible people, which I know is hard to do when it comes to talking about men, but if we just assume that they're not innately evil, what are the things that are the roadblocks to them being the kind of dads that they would want to be? And the second stat that I think is very important is that the research shows that most men in South Africa want to be good dads. They might not be achieving that right now. There might be things that are in the way to stop them from being good dads. Maybe their own stuff or external things. But there's a disconnect between there are men who want to be good dads, and there are men who are living in homes with children. Now, what is happening there?
What's that disconnect?
So, and I think the picture I'm trying to paint is that it's very complex, and it's a lot more complex than even those statistics show.
Yes. Oh, that is just so powerful, and I think it implores us to not just see statistics and be like, cool, make our own assumptions, but to dig a bit deeper, have a critical lens, because that will enable us to really get to the answers that we need. And you make a good point there about the desire often of men to want to be good fathers. But we're also aware that we have a lot of societal stigma as it relates to being a father and being a present father, being an emotional support for your child. And for me growing up, I realized a lot as my father got older. It sounds crass, but he almost became a better father, so to speak. We connected on a more emotional level. We could speak, about deep things that in the past I would only share with my mom, right? And that sort of binary of what I shared with my mom, what I shared with my father, slowly but surely broke down. So I'm curious to know, what are your sort of thoughts as it relates to some of those stigmas around being a man, and being a father? Yeah.
So I think the word that I try to use now, based off conversations with much more learned people than myself, is the term care. And I think even with your story, you know, I think women are shown that they are able to care and that they should be caring for children when children are young. Men are not shown that as much, but when, in your case, the child grows up and is a little bit more relatable as a teenage boy or even as a man, that's when as a man, I can see you as a man and I can relate to you on that level. But I'm not, as a man, able to relate to you as a child. And this idea that men are not able to be caring, to do the labor of care in the way that women are able to do the labor of care, I think that is a real issue. To be seen that care work that comes with parenting, especially in the early years of parenting, is a woman's job. You know, we were talking in the street about the idea of a man card. Even as the progressive kind of middle class life that I had as when I first was a parent, when I was wearing my babies, when I put them in a wrap and I was walking around, I could feel the stigma even for myself. And I'm I feel like I'm a fairly well-spoken, outspoken sometimes person, and I felt like I wanted to hide. I felt that need to people are judging me because I'm a man wearing a baby. I'm a man feeding a baby. I'm a man burping a baby in public. So I think that there is a definite cultural push that pushes men away from those early years, which are the real crucial years of parenting, right? That's like you're saying with your mom. You make that connection so early. So early. And men are missing out on that early care years that are so crucial because, men don't care for babies. That's a woman's job. And so there's definitely that social issue. I mean, there are other social issues as well. You know, there's a real push for men to be the providers. It's a cliche, but it's true. There are many cultures and there are many places in South Africa where if you are a father of children who does not have a job, you are not allowed to see your child. The family stops you from seeing your children because, if you're not paying for them to be fed, you don't get to see them. So it's, again, all these complexities, and that's one of the things I was saying about earlier, that there are roadblocks to stopping men being great fathers.
That's so powerful and so, I think, relevant today. And that whole idea of your fatherhood being contingent upon your ability to provide, I think feeds so deeply into the man box that we have on one of our other episodes. And I implore you to have a look at that episode. Very, very great. And it's this reinforcing cycle then. Because if the family's like, you can't provide, so therefore you can't step up as a father, the father then internalizes that feeling that if I cannot tick these boxes, the breadwinner, the this, the that, I am then not good enough as a father, not worthy. Which then defeats the purpose.
So I may as well not be around because actually they're right, I'm not worthy as a father. So even though I would love to be this father, I don't have the economics of it. And that's why with those stats, again, when we break it apart on race, you can almost break it apart across an economic spectrum. Because being a good parent is a function of economics. It's a lot easier to be a great parent when you have the finances to be a great parent. And that sounds, to use your word, crass. It sounds, we want to be, we want to be more emotional about being a parent. But the fact is, to be a good parent takes money. And in this country, we have split the economics down across race lines. We've forced black men to do more migrant labor. So, even with that statistic, yes, only 30% of black children 30% of black children have a father in the home. But there are a lot of black children whose fathers are working in mines who are still sending that money back home every month. Now, are you saying that they're not a present and active dad? No, that man is thinking about his family every single day he goes to work. So he is an active father, even more than maybe the dad who's sitting at home who never actually talks to his kids or engages with his kids. So it is about redefining and rethinking of what real fatherhood actually looks like.
And really expanding that definition and also contributing to a society that respects
100%.
the important role of fatherhood.
Yeah.
Having employers recognize that fatherhood is an essential part, being a father, being a mother, this is how we're raising the next generation. So it shouldn't be an either-or choice. Yeah. And we need to hopefully get to a place where we can design a society in that way. And I think, as you were chatting, I think for me, as someone who doesn't have children yet, but having been a child, obviously, I think one thing, not that I'm in a position to give advice, but one thing for fathers is that the small actions are sometimes the things that stick in your mind, right? So when I was a kid in like prep school, I used to be a runner. I know you probably can't see it now, but no, of course. I used to be like a runner, I was a sprinter, and I'm doing this thing. And this one time I ran and I like finished fourth, and I would always finish first or second, you know? And I was like, oof, God, that was terrible. And I went to my father and I was like, it's because I wasn't running on my toes, right? I was flat-footed, I wasn't doing this. And he was like, cool, next time you're gonna get it, right? The next week we have this Olympics meet, and I'm at the starting blocks, and I just hear this whistle, and I know it's the iconic dad whistle. And I look to the side, and he has his flip-flops on, and he just looks at me and does this. Stands on his toes. And I'm like, got you. And I won that race, right?
Yeah. How long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
I was like prep school, so I was maybe 8 years old, 7 or 8.
And that is burned into your memory.
That I can still see. It was a hot day, there were parents, and I could see me wore his glasses, and I was like, on the toes.
Yeah.
And just that moment is one of my core memories. It shaped who I am.
Do you remember any of the days your dad worked extra late for work?
Oof. No, it's sort of like,
But that's exactly my point. You don't remember the days your dad worked extra hard.
Yes.
You don't, but you do remember that moment where your dad showed up for you in that way. And I totally agree with what you're saying, that we need to be encouraging men to go, it's not about the finances.
Yes.
Look, parents have to work.
Yes.
I'm not saying, let's be real about it.
Yeah.
But the things that your kids remember is when you're on the sidelines of their race and you're reminding them of the thing you spoke about a week ago.
Yes.
That's the thing your kids remember. That's the thing that's how you show up for them in the real fundamental way.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, that's your story. So I'm going to have to go speak to my children today.
The toes.
What about the toes?
I think that sort of dovetails nicely into the next part of our conversation, which is the transformative power of men helping men and looking at some practical ways in which men who are listening to this podcast, fathers, new fathers who might have that desire to step up as a father, and what are some sort of practical ways, if you could give some advice to some fathers out there, that they can, you've given the advice now of those moments of showing up and financial aspect is important, but being there on those important moments is so key. Is there anything else you would say that you think is important to enable that process of fathers stepping up into their role? Yeah.
Let me just first, again, another disclaimer. I'm not a parenting expert. I've only done it twice myself, but I do spend a lot of time.
You do have a podcast.
I do have
so you're really thinking about these things often.
And I speak to a lot of experts and to a lot of dads. Yeah. And the number one thing that has come up over and over again still surprises me, and I think surprises a lot of people, but the best thing that a dad can do is go to therapy.
Wow. Okay.
It's to sort yourself out. Go to get your mental health support. Go to your counselor at your local church. Find a way to work on yourself first. It's the airbag in the plane scenario. You're always supposed to put the airbag on yourself first, the mask first, before you put a mask on your child. The same thing applies here. You can't help your child grow up to be a mentally strong, healthy person if you are not a mentally strong and healthy person. And the reality is, in 2023, most of us have some level of trauma or stuff that we have to work through. If you want to break the cycle of that, if you want to be the best version of yourself, you need to get help to do that. And I use that word help specifically because men do not like getting help. We don't like we don't like going to the doctor. We don't like to ask for directions. We don't like to get people to give us advice on how to garden or whatever. And we definitely don't want to get help when it comes to our own minds. But you need to get help to be the best version of yourself as you can be. And then the next big piece of advice that I've seen come up again and again is that you need to find other fathers to talk to about fatherhood. That's what I've tried to do with AfroDaddy. The whole way AfroDaddy got started was when I became a dad, there were no conversations online about fatherhood from fathers.
Wow.
So I saw a lot of conversations from moms about fatherhood, and I mean, to be fair, they have a skewed perspective. There wasn't any conversations from men who wanted to be active dads. And so being the kind of person I am, I'm like, I'm going to start talking about it myself. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to start, and hopefully eventually I'll learn. But through that, I've realized that that is what a lot of men need, is to have real conversations with fathers that they trust. Whether it might be an older dad, it might be the dad of your same age, with kids your same age. For me personally, I've got a lot of support and growth from my friends who have kids of the same age, because we're going through the same struggles at the same time. And it's nice to know that when you're failing, or you feel like you're failing, you're not the only one who feels like that. So definitely those are the two big pieces of advice. Get your mental health right, and get your community, get your circle around you.
That's lovely. I thank you so much for that piece of advice. And so I work at an organization called Justice Desk Africa, and we work with young boys and obviously their fathers and their families. And what I've learned in my experience in working with boys, particularly from underserved communities, is how deeply embedded the role of a father is. So my question is, and something I'm tussling with is, now that we know what to do, mental health, community, to most people, I think that would be like, must I really do that now?
It's a big ask.
It's a big ask, especially as men, we have so much to untangle.
Totally.
But why should I do this? What are the benefits of being involved in my child's life, of being, objectively, we can see the benefits, but to those people who are maybe, it's again sounds crass, but are maybe not convinced of having to change their ways, what would you sort of say to some of those people who are like, I don't see the benefits of this yet?
So, I mean, we've kind of already spoke about the benefits to the child.
Yes.
There's the benefits to the mother as well, because in homes where the father, or in families where the father is involved, the mother is much more likely to be physically and mentally healthy, and she's also much more likely to be better employed.
Yes.
Because she has capacity and space to go and study further, to go and get better jobs, and to work a bit harder in those jobs, because she's not spending all of her mental resources on her children, because the father's there taking up some of that labor. But the thing we don't talk about a lot, actually, is the fact that being an active and involved dad is good for the dad.
There we go.
And that's what I've experienced. And that's because a lot of the conversation we have is that you got to sacrifice as a father, you got to put everyone else before yourself, you got to, even like the stuff we say now, you got to, get your mental health in check so that your children's mental health can be in check. But it's like, getting your mental health in check is good for you. It makes you feel good to be mentally healthy. The other thing statistically is that fathers, people who are actively involved as dads, they themselves are better employed because they're working for a bigger purpose. They have better finances. Again, you're thinking and saving, and you're spending a little bit more wisely, because you're not just thinking about the here and now. You're thinking, not even for your life, you're thinking about your children's life and further on. So you're building a legacy. You're also, there's higher levels of happiness in fathers who are actively involved. And that's statistically true, but I can say that's, for me personally, true as well. There is something about having your person or your people in the home with you who love and adore you, who come up to you and tell you how brilliant you are, and who tell you how much they love you, and who just feel like you can do no wrong. It does make you feel kind of like a superhero, and that is not many spaces where men get that kind of feedback. So to be told that you are loved and adored in that way is so good, like emotionally and in all the ways. And the other thing is that there is a level of pride that you can have, and it's, again, this is all complex. Using words like pride, like can be very masculine. But for me as a man, when I can provide for my family, when I can see that my kids feel safe with me and safe in the home that I've provided for them, and that they're thriving in all the ways that they could be, I feel proud. And that is something that we don't talk about as a good benefit for men to do.
Yes. Oh, you've definitely convinced me. So
Yes, go and have kids.
So I'm sure the people listening and watching definitely took something from that. So I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for
I
having me.
really, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, you sharing your experience and sharing your knowledge. I think this conversation is so important. And I implore everyone listening to this and watching this to share this with whoever you can, especially fathers, because some of the information in this podcast was new to me as well. And it's so important. I think more people need to be having this conversation. And also go check out AfroDaddy. Where can I find your podcast?
The best place to go is the website, AfroDaddyOnline.com, and everything I do, I just dump on there. So you can find it.
Lovely, fantastic. So thank you again for joining us in another episode of the Men in Conversation series. Please check out all the other episodes. We're dealing with the power of sport to end violence, the man box, men and friendship. So there's lots there. Please dig in and please share, like, subscribe. See you guys next time.